And good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of JMU Sound Off. I am Jonathan McNamara from Richmond, Virginia, and your James Madison University Dukes are 8-0 after a 30-27 win over Old Dominion in the Royal Rivalry version 2.0 in a beautiful night in Harrisonburg, Virginia. We've got a great show planned for you tonight. Our guest, Catie Harper, the new beat reporter from the Daily News Record, they'll be covering James Madison University, covers this team for the first time. We'll get a chance to introduce you to her. Let you hear her story and give you an insight into what she has planned in her new role. And we also have Mike from College Football Campus Tour. Had an opportunity to meet him yesterday in Bridgeforth Stadium, give him an opportunity to share some of his experience and a little bit of knowledge about how he started going around to venues across the country. Had a busy day yesterday going to both William & Mary as well as Harrisonburg. So we're excited to bring him on. And as always, our show is sponsored by our friends at Skyline Financial Partners. We got a chance to see Tim Nelson yesterday, and the Montpelier Collective had an opportunity in our pregame conversation to talk with Cliff Wood from the Collective about was a really successful weekend for the Montpelier Collective with a Friday night happy hour that was with the JMU Duke Club. A lot of new donors engaged and a lot more of a focus on the importance of the collective and its role in helping to maintain and sustain the momentum that has been developed this season for JMU football. So a great weekend for them. We're really appreciative, as always, to Cliff. And with that, going to bring in Taylor Adkins and Michael Evangelista. Guys, I have to ask you before we get into anything, is everybody as tired as I am tonight? I didn't get back to Richmond last night. Poor planning on my part in terms of homecoming. It's a little after 3 a.m. And then I was stupid enough to wake up and go to a workout class and then coach 2 youth soccer games today. So if anybody feels like we're dragging today, it's because I am. These 8
Good
p.m.
for you,
kickoffs.
Good for you for going to a class in the morning.
And there's picture proof of it. I sent you guys. But no, the 8 p.m. kickoffs for my 40s now, man, hard to bounce back. But guys, what an amazing day. And we'll start really with just the atmosphere. And I want to go around to both you. Taylor had a chance to tailgate with you yesterday. Michael had a chance to see your wonderful fiance. We kept missing each other in the lots, but guys, starting with the tailgate, I don't think you could have asked for a more perfect day for a JMU fan, especially considering all the grumbling around the noon kickoffs we've had this year. Just a pretty amazing day, and it seems like 26,000 people plus took advantage of it. I have a feeling there were a lot more people at the tailgates that never even made it into the game. We saw a lot of Halloween costumes around, lots of families. Shout out to Barry Sonemon for his ribs and brisket. He had a full catering setup going. He said he cooked for 200 people yesterday. We saw a lot of other versions of that around. Just a great day. And I'll start with you, Taylor. Your thoughts on just the pregame atmosphere, which was pretty spectacular.
Well, part of the pregame atmosphere was I guess we can call it it was kind of our second, but really our first official Sound Off Live that we did from the tailgate lots. We tried at Marshall. Some of you saw that attempt. It didn't go through like we wanted it to, but we had a great 45 minutes. We brought on some fans. We brought on, Carol Benassi from JMU Nation. We brought on John Connor from the NIL Collective. Brought in our buddy Michael Morton, whose family, his dad played at JMU, and he's been tailgating his entire life. And started off with Cliff, obviously reinforcing everything they're doing with the NIL. And so had a good time doing that, hoping to do that a couple more times this year. We're looking to bring the show on the road to Georgia State and hope to continue to do at least a little something every home game this year. But I said during that live broadcast, if you asked me to check a box of what the perfect scenario would be for a game day in Harrisonburg, everything from the weather to the time to the full tailgates, the team was on a roll. It's a rivalry game. National television. It was Halloween weekend, so of course you have some of those festivities there. I mean, it just checked every box that a football fan could want, and definitely a JMU football fan could want. It was a great day, a great atmosphere. The only thing I'll say is that the heat actually got to me a little bit. I probably should have hydrated a little better but you don't really think of heat being an issue in late October in Harrisonburg, but it was pretty steamy until probably later in the second half. So I'll kick it off to Michael. I don't know if you had any similar issues, but if that's the only complaint that I can have, I would say it's a pretty daggone good day in Harrisonburg.
100%. I was going to say, I don't know if I could have described it any better than you. It was just a phenomenal day, phenomenal atmosphere. Shout out to, seeing Carol Benassi, John Connor, Pim, Kenny, our friends Todd from JMU Sports Blog, Partlow, Chris Ward, so many awesome people. A lot of those names you probably see on Twitter too. So we all try to, get together in person as well. We're not just online. So really awesome day. I think for me, What was really awesome on the lots is so many people were also really excited about the game. And I know that's like a very simple and very fundamental thing to digest, but usually people are there just for homecoming and seeing people, but people were excited for the football game. They were thrilled. We were top 25 on ESPNU, 8 p.m. ESPN primetime, right? It was such a big buildup to the game. And I'll be honest, I don't know about you guys, but I was emotional before kickoff. Like 15 minutes before kickoff, the student section was packed, the stadium was packed. There was this huge anticipation for kickoff that it was unbelievable. And seeing the team run out the field with the fireworks to a packed, loud, ruckus Bridgeport Stadium, it sort of felt like not like we did it, but man, like we've waited so long for this type of moment. Obviously, the avenge factor, but just seeing everyone united towards one goal as a fan base, it was really special to watch.
And I want to add to that.
I went. Well, you go. I was going to just say to add to that though, for at least from my perspective, and Taylor, please let me know if you agree, but I think you will. I've never seen a crowd arrive that early to a game, and that for me was really important because there had been a lot of focus this week, especially JMU doing some new things again to try to enhance that experience, having that cannon blast go off, letting people know, hey, go to the game. And I think the discussion around that it obviously worked. Maybe because of its 8 o'clock game, people weren't worried about that final 30 minutes of tailgating. They said, let's just get this thing on the road. But to see it work and with that moment on national TV against the team we were playing, and to set up for that national anthem, which I know we're all on multiple threads today. For the acapella group who did just a phenomenal job. I've loved, as a JMU acapella alum myself, seeing all these groups get to have their moment. I thought they rose to the occasion, seeing the student section singing the national anthem. You see that in a lot of other venues in sports. I know the NHL has some teams around the NHL made that part of their tradition now. But to see the students and seemingly a spontaneous, a version of it. I don't think I didn't at least see a graphic telling the students to sign or anything. They did it on their own. And I just thought, again, like you said, Michael, it felt like a culmination or a moment where we arrived somewhere, and you can't understate that, especially in the fact that all the conversation leading up to this week, the national discussion, Kurt Signetti on ESPN2 the night before, for the crowd to deliver, especially with so many people in comments threads and saying the students aren't going to show up, they're going to be at Halloween parties. It was great to see.
Yeah, and I want to echo all the comments that are coming in, and want to encourage everyone that is watching live, please do send some comments during the show so that we can kind of engage with that. But everyone that the comments that have come across the screen so far were things that, John, you and I said in the stands, that 08 App State vibes of that night game, the students singing the national anthem and hearing that kind of echo and reverberate around the Shenandoah Valley. It just sounded cool. And I can only imagine, one thing that I'm kind of envious of is because I'm always at every JMU game. I never have gotten the chance to see what it looks like as you're driving down 81. And especially if you're someone that's just unfamiliar with, where if you're someone that's making a long 8, 10, and 12-hour drive, and it's just interstate, and you're not even paying attention to the fact that you're coming up on Harrisonburg, Virginia. It's got to be a pretty cool sight that you're driving down the interstate. You see some lights in the distance, and all of a sudden you're driving by this massive purple stadium. And especially on a night last night, 8 o'clock, the stadium was full. It's probably a pretty neat visual to see. But to echo everything you all said, the students responded, not just the students, the alumni. Everyone gave that team the entrance they deserved as they ran onto Zane Schoker Field, Bridgeforth Stadium, for the first time ever as a Division I FBS nationally ranked team. It was awesome. So to everyone listening, thank you. And if you're not listening, share this with those that are friends of yours. That was a neat sight to see.
And one last thing, Mike, I want to ask you, because I know you focus a lot on the recruiting, and I saw something from JMU Sports News this week where they commented about some of the recruits that we had on visits specifically yesterday, but we also had a major recruit from the women's basketball program in town yesterday in Harrisonburg, walking the sidelines. We saw her in front of Section 109. You have to think that a moment like this, combined with the record and all of the coverage, it's hard to overstate the impact it's going to have on recruiting when you have a night like that with so many talented prospects in attendance.
It's priceless, right? Like, this is what regional rivalries are all about. This is what happens when you have fan bases that are passionate. It shows, right? For recruits that are coming in and trying to figure out where they want to spend the next 4 to 5 years at, Like, where do they want to be? Somewhere that cares about the program, whether it's basketball, football, athletics in general. A ruckus crowd. I mean, Taylor, you hit it right on the head. The team ran out of Plecker, the Plecker Center, to the encore or the applause that they deserved. Right. Top 25, packed stadium, ruckus. It was unreal. I watched a little bit of the replay. Honestly, I haven't had too much time to look at it again, but they commented constantly on like the intro of the game, how people were so passionate and loud, and the cameras were shaking. You could hear the crowd on the ESPN broadcast. It was awesome. But to your point, John, from a recruiting perspective, tons of recruits out there, committed, uncommitted, basketball, football, you name it, all across the athletic program. I trust that we'll probably see some big commitments soon, knock on wood, or if anything, affirm folks that were a little bit over the line or a little bit on the line on if their commit was as hard as we thought it would be.
All right. And with that, let's transition over to the game itself, which the average JMU fan is going to say, man, we would love to blow out another 40-point victory over the ODU. For some levels, I actually think the fact that the rivalry lived up to what it was supposed to be, maybe before we all were focused on what happened last year. We all thought this was going to be that yearly game that we all looked forward to, and it delivered in a big way. There were a lot of questions going into this game: is how would ODU's offense stack up against our defense? And I know, Michael, you want to talk to some specifics about what they did. But credit to ODU. They came into yesterday's game and they gave their A game, as Signetti said in the post-game press conference. We're getting everybody's best game. And from ODU, I think it was probably their best game to date in terms of what they did on the offensive side of the football. Aided by the opening drive, JMU looks like they're driving. A pass from Jordan McLeod out to the flat to Reggie Brown. Looks like it hits the turf, but that turnover was a pretty big moment early in the game. And then it was kind of off to the races, back and forth game all night long.
Yeah. Happy to take this one, John. And I think you hit the nail on the head. We had that 40-yard pass to Surratt. And also, is this 2021, 2019 JMU football now, throwing for 400 yards a game? We had two receivers, I think, over 150 yards in one game. That was fantastic. But let me do my best impression of Tony Romo here real quick in terms of a game-by-game breakdown. I got a lot of questions, like whether it was in the stands or afterwards, and like, what was ODU doing so differently? Like, why were we struggling against their offense formations or what they were doing on that side of the ball? Like I had a lot of questions like, oh, why can't we defend this? Why can't we defend that? But really kudos to the ODU staff. So I hopefully shared my screen here. This formation is probably going to haunt all of JMU Nation for quite a while. The double stack split towards the sideline here. They pretty much ran this about 90% of the time. I think shout out to the ODU staff. They knew they couldn't compete with JMU at the line of scrimmage. So what they decided to do here, essentially spread out our defense as wide as possible. And now, if you look at this, the quarterback has an option to either hand the ball off, throw the bubble screen left or right, depending if they have the numbers on the outside. And what I mean by numbers is number of defenders to offensive players. And what it does is you'll notice we've got 5 defensive backs now occupied on the back end, which leaves 7 offensive players on the line of scrimmage versus 6 up front. So it's all a numbers game. That's all they did. It's a fantastic offense, particularly for players or teams that know they can't really compete up front. UNH ran this phenomenally over the years. This is how they won a lot of games and kept a lot of games tight. So when you play this type of game, Ricky, Ronnie, and co said, we're not going to beat them up front. So what we're going to do, we're going to challenge their true freshmen and true sophomore corners and Chauncey Logan and 162-pound D'Angelo Pons. And we're going to ask them to really try to get off these blocks on our wide receivers and make the play. And that's all they did. Like, if you watch the game over and over again, they either threw the screen to the outside or ran the ball. And when you run the ball against this and out of this type of formation, you create natural gaps. There's natural space. You have to rely on our defensive backs to get off blocks and make tackles one-on-one. So it makes it really difficult. And when you do this over and over again, I'll actually try to press play here. When you do this over and over again, and you do it fast, it becomes really hard to defend. As you can see here, they get a 3 or 4 yard gain. So really good stuff on the back end. I can do this forever. But kudos to their staff. And we adjusted at the end of the day. Like, we made the plays that needed to be done. We won the game, obviously, but certainly like that was very tough to defend. And they really exploited a matchup on the outside. I can guarantee through another offseason of strength and conditioning, recruiting on the outside, I doubt they'll be able to do that going forward. So hopefully that was helpful for everyone. And for folks not seeing it on the podcast, tune in on the YouTube page to see the actual video. You can actually see what I'm talking about on that end.
Well, Michael, I want to ask you a follow-up on that, because in his post-game press conference, Coach Signe mentioned exactly what you're talking about, but he also said he was surprised with how successful they were at running the football. His exact quote was, "They got the run game going." That kind of surprised me, to be honest with you. So, I mean, that is something that I don't know if he expected, but in some of the conversations leading up to the game, the way that I think the ODU Monarchists, podcast phrased it, the way they thought they were able to, is by spreading us out wide. They were able to break those runs every, maybe one or out of every
Absolutely.
10 runs, they would have a pop, because that running back was able to get into the secondary, because we were constantly, and I know Chandler was watching the game with him in the stands, was talking about how we were shifting our safeties to kind of adapt to what
It's,
they
it's
were
all a
doing. And when
numbers
you
game,
did
John.
that,
That's what it is, right? When you spread us out wide, we only have essentially 6 men in the box against 7 offensive threats, right? You've got 5 offensive linemen. You've got a running back that's going to run the dive, and you've got to defend the quarterback run as well. So it's all a numbers game. And so they either throw or run to the area where they feel that they have a numbers component or a numbers advantage. So it sounds super simple on paper, but when you play it over and over again, you're running the no huddle. Our defensive linemen, I think, they were trying to get set half the time. It becomes really, really hard to defend. And it's quite frankly, a really smart game plan. When you're thinking about mano up front in the trenches, they knew they couldn't compete. Just call it what it is. Anytime they were in a general like a typical offensive formation, we either got a sack, tackle for loss, and the goal line stance, right? They couldn't use the whole field anymore. And what happened? 4 straight negative plays. Good job to them, but we stepped up. We made the plays when we needed to.
Taylor, your thoughts on the game? I know obviously back and forth, couple moments where JMU goes up by 2 scores on multiple occasions, but ODU found a way to keep clawing back. But the defense, as they have all season long, continues to find that extra gear we needed late in the fourth quarter. Also, offense struggled again a little bit in the second half. I know Signetti again in his post game, they have to relook at the running game, because we're not creating necessarily the best running lanes for our backs, but did enough to win this game. Some big plays through the air. Just give some numbers. Jordan McLeod, 27 of 40, 340 yards through the air, 3 touchdown passes, and another one on the ground. Reggie Brown had himself a day, 9 catches for 142 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then what can we say about Eliza Surratt? 8 catches for 139 yards and a touchdown, and just continues to find a way to make big catches in big moments. A lot of those catches from Surratt were very contested, and he continues to shine here on this offensive side of the football.
Well, and one of the big talking points earlier in the season was how we kind of shut down in the third quarter. This game, the third quarter is actually where we scored those 2 touchdowns. We got that safety. It was kind of that fourth quarter. Matter of fact, I want to say the statistic after the third quarter. I know McLeod had over 300 yards passing at that point, but he only finished with 340. And I remember looking at that statistic of, I think it was like 310 yards or something in that area after the third quarter. I said, man, if we're going 100 yards a quarter here, he's going to have over 400 for the game. And then for him to end at 340, the offense kind of stalled a little bit in the fourth quarter. But one thing that continues to amaze me about this team, for all their shortcomings and all the things where they're, not producing, is when they need to step up, man, does that team ever step up. And same thing for the defense. I mean, the defense was getting beat a lot of times throughout this game, but when it came down to like, look, the defense these last 2 possessions that they had, you need to stop them. You need to hold them off. And we win this game. And they did. And they performed at such a high level. One thing I noticed, and maybe this is more from the casual fan perspective, is just how delayed that play action kind of handoff was.
Yeah.
The quarterback seemed to hold it for an eternity. I mean, if you probably clock it, the difference between what he was doing and maybe another quarterback that we've played this year, it might be less than an entire second, but it just seemed like an eternity where they would hold it in there and you really didn't know who was going to come out with it. And then the amount of wide receiver screens and real short passes that they did throughout the entire game, I don't have the statistics in front of me, but it felt like 80-90% of their passes were within 5-10 yards of the line of scrimmage. That when they went long, I mean, we're waiting to see who has the ball in the backfield, and we're waiting for those crossing routes across the linebackers and everything. And it just kind of, I mean, I want to give so much credit to the ODU coaching staff. They prepared what it seems like in this game, that it wasn't just more of a, we had a letdown or they executed. it just seems like they came out with a game plan where they saw where there were holes in our defense and they saw where there were some weaknesses they could exploit. And they really just did a good job with that. But at the end of the day, I said this, that, I think during our live broadcast, I might have even said it last Sunday during our other normal podcast, was yes, on paper, statistically, this should be a game where we just absolutely dominate. There wasn't one statistical category where I think they had the upper hand or even really close. But I said, it's a rivalry game. It's a chance for them to play spoiler. It's our homecoming. They're still in the running for first place in the East Division. And, this is the last 6 games, now the last 7 games that they've played have been within 1 score. So I said that while everything on paper says this should be a 20, 30, even 40-point blowout, it wouldn't surprise me that at the end of the night, people around the country are scrolling through their phones, looking at scores from around the country and go, whoa, didn't see that coming. And to put in perspective the 8-0 record that we have, you can take every team in the country right now, and you can see when the top teams failed to perform to what either even expectations or way statistically they should match up with another team. So it wasn't pretty, but we beat a good football team. Old Dominion is still in the running for the East. They are tending to improve every game they play. And I'll say this, the media seems to agree with us because we jumped up 2 spots in the polls because of that quote unquote close win to quote unquote not a good team. So I think give JMU a lot of credit, a lot of respect for the way they stepped up when they need to. Give Old Dominion for coming into that game prepared, and that coaching staff preparing their players to match up with us.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think in the first quarter, the group of guys I was with kept saying, watch out for the screen and go. Eventually, we're going to be sitting on that screen pass on the outside, and someone's going to break outside. And next, 58 yards to that wide receiver Dutton, his only catch of the game, by the way, broke it wide open. So it's like schematically, like kudos to the coaching staff. They knew what they were good at. They knew what they weren't good at. And it goes back again, right? Like the numbers game, throwing those screens. I think they averaged 7 yards per catch. So I think they were 23 for 36. I'd want to see what the average yards after the catch look like, because that could have been astronomical because they weren't throwing the ball down the field at all. Lastly, I want to make one big point. Last play of the game on our side, Ryan Hansen, punter extraordinaire. We trusted it. We ran down the clock with 51 seconds left, decided to punt the ball, down them in the 5-yard line and told them go 80 yards and score. And obviously the rest is history. So I know we talked about McLeod, Surratt, all some of these other transfers, but man, Ryan Hansen from Arkansas State, that he could be our MVP.
And he had pressure on him too on many of those punts. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll say with that, one last thing about the game that I thought was interesting. Sitting in 109, getting a chance to every week see Curt Cignetti on the sidelines. I will say this is the week that I found him to be the most animated in terms of his back and forth with the officials. He clearly, we could hear him on the sidelines, was not, did not agree, to be kind, with how they were calling some of the way their corners, where their wide receivers were engaging with their corners. I know Chandler pointed out that the rule is you're not supposed to engage with the corner until the ball is thrown. Cignetti also seemed to share that view. And I think that led to, we did see a big holding penalty on one of ODU's drives, though, where that finally was called in the second half. But that was something that I have never personally seen him that animated on the sidelines in terms of his officials.
I had people in the stands with me looking to me and saying, hey, what is the rule on that? Because it seemed every play, and to those that are not familiar with what we're talking about, that the receivers coming out, and the argument that you could have from the other side is, well, who's engaging who, right? If the receiver's coming off the line, you expect the cornerback or the defensive back to come up and jam them, and so it's the ref may argue the side of really who's engaging who in that respect, and is the defensive back engaging the receiver, and then it just so happens to turn into a block. But I think there were enough times last night where Coach Cignetti was more than justified in his disagreement with the referees. But at the same time, I don't think in any way, shape, or form that the game was affected to the point where I would be complaining. The results of the game, or the score, is a result of the refs not making those calls.
If you look even at the play, and for those watching the live feed, you could totally tell the receiver engaged the defender right before
Yeah.
the ball was thrown. That's what we're talking about. Like, is that
Right.
not illegal? Is that not legal? Who knows? Like, you could tell right here. It's pretty phenomenal how point blank it was. But this was their offense 90%, I would say 80% of the game. So right here, ball snapped, and get like receivers already engaged with the defender.
Yep.
So we'll see.
Yeah. Well, before now, let's bring in our guest. But I will say one last thing. It was fun to have a rivalry game again in Harrisonburg against an opponent we've all grown to hate since the last time we had a primetime game at Bridgeford Stadium. It was great, especially on the winning side. I might feel less happy today if we had lost that game. But having a rivalry game with the team that matters and that atmosphere is spectacular. I don't think you could ask for anything better as a fan.
Let's acknowledge the trophy presentation that happened on the field for last year, winning the Royal Rivalry across all 20 sports. And I think we're well ahead of pace. I forgot whose Twitter account it is. There's a Twitter account that we engage with as a big JMU fan, but their Twitter name is basically keeping track of the Royal Rivalry right now. And all I know is whenever I see that, we are well in the lead.
And last thing, how about the band, The Everything, getting their moment to play with the marching band at halftime? I have to be honest, going into the game, I had to look up who The Everything was, but then when I saw their song Hooch, I was like, man, that was kind of a banger back in the day. Yeah. So I did joke with some people in the stands. It was clear as now I have kids and I'm in my 40s, seeing their lead singer was clearly having a moment. I just imagined his teenage daughter or something in the lead up to it being like, Dad, what were you? And he's like, this is my moment. This is my moment tonight. Let me have it. And I get my version of that in December when I have my reunion concert on campus. So we'll us old guys every once in a while get one night to shine, and that was there. So I thought they did a great job. Great job with the halftime show again. Great job with everything that happened around the game day ops. I thought it was spectacular. And that's a perfect segue to bringing in our first guest tonight, Mike from College Football Campus Tour. Mike, thanks for taking some time. I know you probably wanted to go maybe to sleep a little early tonight because I know you had some crazy travels this week, but we wanted to have you on because you have the unique in situation with what you do for a full-time basis now of traveling to venues all around the country, getting to experience what the pageantry and the facilities that college campuses have all across the various levels of college football. So we wanted to have you on tonight. First of all, introduce yourself and a little bit about what you do, and then we'll get to your experience yesterday in Harrisonburg.
So I appreciate the opportunity to be on the show, first of all. So College Football Campus Tour started in 2017. Really just wanted to explore the country. My dad played college football at a small school in California called University of Pacific. He told me one of the best games he ever played was at Colorado State. He had 19 tackles and an interception. And so I went to stay at a hotel in Colorado, and on the way was Boulder and Fort Collins. Did a campus visit, roamed the stadiums, really enjoyed it. They had bronze statues of Ralphie and a ram, took my photo there, and kind of got a little bug for campus visits and started a tour and go, a trip to Arizona, do Arizona State, Arizona, Oregon State, that sort of thing. And then that fall went to 13 games, the next year 30, the next year 50. And then in 2021, I accomplished a goal of seeing a game at all 130 FBS schools. Now there's 133. And for the last couple of years, working on FCS. Yesterday, I went also to William and Mary at 1 p.m., and that was number 73 out of 128. And, the ultimate goal is to see a game at all 261 Division I schools. And if things go according to plan, that will be at the end of 2026.
Awesome, Mike. Well, go ahead, John.
No, I was just gonna say my dad did text me though, and he said you got to make it to some Division III schools because he's always saying that the best place to go see a game is Cortland University because that's where he went. So he always says a Cortica Jug is the best game in America. So that's my dad's shout out for the night.
Last Friday, I went to Western Connecticut State in Danbury, Connecticut. I had a choice to go to Temple SMU in an NFL stadium, which I don't care about. And I went to that one out there. So been to 2 D3 games and 1 D2 this year. I try to mix in every level I can. But your dad is right. And you go down in levels, and it's a much more personable experience. And they definitely appreciate your visits a lot as well.
Mike, first off, amazing to have you hop on. Second, it was awesome to tailgate with you yesterday, and you come out and see sort of some of the festivities all the way in Convo lot, as well as all the different lots. You mentioned your father played at University of Pacific. I'll throw a name at you. Michael Olowokandi, 1998 first overall pick in the NBA draft. That's a good little fun fact for everyone listening. He was a former center that went to that university.
Yeah, number
My
one
question,
pick, the
number
Candy
one
Man.
pick, Candy Man.
Yes, sir.
So my question has to do with, and probably not a surprise to anyone, tell us a little bit about the overall experience at James Madison. You got to walk around the different tailgates, do some traditions with the fans, as well as be at the stadium before kickoff and obviously throughout the game. Some of your pictures and videos you shared online were absolutely phenomenal. And I think you even texted me. You said it was more than you thought. So I'd love to kind of hear from you, share with the fan base, your overall thoughts of Harrisonburg and JMU.
Yeah. So first of all, you guys individually, I got to spend time with each of you at the game. Sometimes you talk with people on Twitter, and then when you meet them in real life, it's like you've been buddies for a while, And so I just felt that immediately. And to be honest with you, I feel it throughout the Sun Belt, and that's why, when you guys got added, I mean, at first, I'll be honest, I loved that you guys were blue bloods and FCS, but the fact that you've come up and handled business so well, it's just a natural fit. But I was really excited for this one in particular because the only game I'd been at JMU was a spring COVID playoff game against North Dakota. And you get some of it. You're going to see the streamers, you're going to see the traditions, but nothing like the scene that we had yesterday. You guys were all great at the tailgates. I showed up with no ticket. I think within 20 minutes, I probably had 4 in my pocket, and so those kind of things. And then I've been going to a lot of the weeknight games. The Sun Belt gets showcased on there. Tons of G5s, and it's so hit or miss with the crowd. And so the combination of this being a Saturday game, and as you guys mentioned, on national TV, and the record you have, and I told everybody at the game, like, the college football world is mad with you because of not being able to qualify for the conference championship. So all those things coming together, and then getting that atmosphere. I sent out a video of the team taking the field, the fireworks going off. I took a photo of the student section and said, this, take note, G5 schools, this is what it's supposed to be like. And so, and especially, I take photos, I call them the shot of the night. And anytime there's not a full crowd, people want to rip it apart. And, sometimes you're not going to get a perfect crowd. It's not homecoming. It's not a night game. Your team's not rated in the top 25. But you guys had all those things come together. And it was a crazy game, and it was close. But you know what? You win and you're 8-0 and you beat a rival and you keep it moving. Look at any team that's 8-0 right now. They played a game within 7 points, and no one will remember when you finish the season in first place at 11-0 and 12-0. So it's big time football at JMU. Harrisonburg, one of the best in all of the Sun Belt. And as you mentioned, I felt like it exceeded even what I thought it was going to be. It was a great night.
Well, and Mike, we met at Marshall during the tailgate, and I kind of had a bit of a fanboy moment because I came up to you and I said how much I appreciate your content and what you're trying to do. I mean, no one has ever done what you've done to the level that you're doing it. And I think the value that you bring to a lot of these programs, especially a lot of programs off the beaten path, even at the lower levels, FCS and other things, other schools like that don't really get to see the national spotlight a lot. I think sometimes schools don't appreciate what value, it's called non-traditional media when we're talking about podcasts and blogs and social media. But at the same time, it's the modern day mainstream media. It's getting more clicks and more views and than a lot of the quote unquote traditional media. So I think you're doing a great job there. And one thing that I told you is that as a fan myself, I still have that little kid in me when I walk through the tunnel of a new stadium and I see something for the first time that I've either seen on television, I've seen through pictures, I've seen through other visuals, and your account kind of just gets me excited for some of these opportunities that I get to experience. I know John and I, we're going down to Georgia State this weekend, and we talked about, at the beginning of the season, if I'm being honest, I don't think we thought the Georgia State game was going to be as meaningful as it's going to be. to be honest, the appeal for us is, let's go see what Turner Field looks like renovated into a football stadium. That was the main draw, and a chance to spend a weekend in Atlanta cheering on the Dukes. So I love what you do, and I'm bringing all this context in to say I don't want to gloss over just how much work you're putting into this. So you mentioned before you got on the podcast today, you apologized for not having your JMU shirt with you yesterday because, and I believe I heard you correctly, I didn't pack it when I last left my house October 4th. We're talking to you on October 29th. So by my quick math, 25 days on the road. And just, walk us through maybe the macro version, the very broad version of what that last month has looked like, but then get into the details and just walk us through the last 24 hours that you've been through, as well as the next 24 hours and what they're going to bring.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I appreciate all the compliments about the account. It's not named Michael Barker, it's College Football Campus Tour. And I really just kind of go with the idea that I'm the camera lens for people. And you guys are JMU fans and you're watching JMU playing Bridgeforth. And then you think, what would it be like to go to SB Ballard? What would it be like to go to the Rock at App? And so what I try to do is just through my travels, give you a little preview and maybe you'll want to go there. But you mentioned when you walk into the stadium, there's nothing like it. And people all the time are asking me to do rankings and what's the top this. And what the reason I don't like to do it is because you're working against established lists from people who haven't been to these places. And I always bring up the ACC. I love Lane Stadium in Virginia Tech. That's my favorite ACC stadium. People will say Death Valley, Clemson. They'll say the Doak. And if you don't say that, you're wrong, even though they haven't been there. So boots on the ground is going to change your mind in everything. And so I'm fortunate to be able to do that. The grind is part of it, and I really enjoy it. I tell people, like, for this year, the week 0 was August 26th. The last day of the regular season is November 26th. So really, it's only 90 days. It seems crazy if you're going to go out for 25 days. But it's a way to get it done in a quick amount. What I've done in the past is I've announced my whole schedule in the beginning of the year. And what I found was that if you're not on that schedule, you get a little bit disinterested. So two things. One is I kind of like to have a little bit of anticipation, but the other part is they hold back kick times. They have the 12-day and the 6-day rule where the networks are trying to, throughout the season, put the best games in the best spot. And a lot of people probably didn't think JMU was going to be 8-0. And, you look at other teams that Clemson has got, I think they're 4-4. And so you're not going to put so really I left on October 4th and I had no idea where I was going to be on October 21st or October 28th. And so, I was disappointed not to have my JMU shirt. I got it on right now, even though, it's just for a podcast, but really, we did the 23 games in 26 days. Coming home for a day and a half, say hi to the family, everybody, it's funny because they just follow my Twitter and they know exactly where I am. So it's not like I'm lost, but this November, when the calendar turns, you guys mentioned the tailgating all week at Ruston, Louisiana, Huntsville, Texas, Statesboro, Georgia, Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm wearing a t-shirt and it's great, and so we're turning the calendar. We got Maction, we got Mount Pleasant, we got Buffalo, we got Kalamazoo. They're all coming up, Colorado. So I'm coming home, restocking the suitcase, sending out some credential requests to try to get a little bit more access to some of these places. And once you're on the road, it's find a grocery store, find a gym to take a shower, and make sure you got the shirt that you need and just go at it. I'm going to be out past Thanksgiving, and that's the whole regular season.
I love your
Mike,
shout out to Planet Fitness, by the way, Mike. That was pretty funny.
Yeah, that's what I tell people like they call it the inside baseball, right? The inside stuff. So Planet Fitness for $24, all club membership. They're open 24 hours a day. You can shower anytime, especially for me if a game gets out at 11:30 and I got a flight at 5 and don't have time to check into a hotel. It's got free Wi-Fi, and I slept in my car 24 days in a row. And some places, it's hard to find a safe spot to sleep because there's an element out there or police, or so if you sleep in a parking lot of 24 hours a day, then you don't get messed with. And I try to explain to people, nobody wants to sleep in their car, okay? But when you're self-funded and you go to 60 games, let's say in the regular season, a hotel's between 100 and 150 bucks. In that 90-day period, you're saving somewhere between $6,000 and $9,000. So for me, I'd rather go to 60 football games and sleep in the car than go to 15 football games and be at the Hilton and get the continental breakfast and all that. I just don't care. So it depends what you want, but whether you call it an amazing race, I call it a man test. You just want to see what you're capable of. This is year 7, and meeting new people like you guys every time you walk into a stadium or a new place, it energizes you. So you're tired, but I will never use that as an excuse. And I had such a great time in Harrisonburg, and I try to put it out there on Twitter like this is a place that you should come. So hopefully people will.
Well, we just had a comment from one of our listeners, David Ahern. He asked, is there any way people can support you just to show their appreciation what you do?
I obviously, yes. I think on my Twitter page, there's a little like dollar envelope thing, and it's attached to the like a Venmo or a PayPal or Cash App type thing. I is my regular job. I'm a real estate appraiser in California. It's been a great job for a while. Interest rates are extremely high, so we're not doing as much. But I'm hoping like the trajectory of the football account someday this will be my main thing. I call it Shark Tank. You have a good idea, but you need someone, and you guys are experiencing the same thing. Put together a good show. You just need that investor to say, I love what you're doing. Don't change a thing, but we're going to fund it and call it blank company podcast, blank company tour. So yeah, I mean, if somebody wanted to directly message me, they could, but I think that there's a little link on there to donate if you'd like to. So far, I think in 7 years I got $25. So it's cool. Either way, we're going to continue to do it.
Well, if you're listening to this podcast, let's boost it up. We can do more than $25 tonight.
There we go.
Especially to say thank you for what you've done to showcase our program. I had a last question, 2 questions actually. First of all, is there a venue in the country that you've been to that reminded you of any way of Bridgeforth? First question. And then second question, because it's a segue to what we're going to talk about in a minute. What can fans expect when they go to see Georgia State this weekend?
Okay, so you're asking for comps, which is always off the top of my head is a difficult question. I will say this: it feels like a P5 stadium, and I got a chance after the game to go on top of the old press box and watch the band perform after the game, and took a ladder up, and I looked through the old press box. And what people don't realize is the old press box is the old home side, and so when you can upgrade the other side, it's not that it wasn't. It's an upgrade, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So the home side and everything technologically, it's on par with some of the best G5 stadiums and P5 potential. Obviously, off the top of my head, I can't tell you a stadium particularly that reminds me of. And can you tell me your second question? Because I'm just rambling.
What can fans expect to see when they go to Georgia State this week?
So it's really, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Okay. And so with this stadium, you're looking at a stadium that's built for the 1996 Olympics, ended up being the Braves Stadium. When you go to the corner of, you can see where home plate is. You can see where the center field scoreboard was. There's a Hank Aaron statue right behind the outfield commemorating his 715th home run. The upper deck is completely tarped off, and it's got Georgia State white letters there. So also the right field bleachers, what they did was they put bleachers inside of the wall. So there's about 10 rows of the roadside that are right on top of the stadium. And I think those are the best seats in the stadium. In the left field, outfield area, that's where they have the band and they have the student section. And then along the home sideline and towards home plate, that's where the majority of the home fans are. You should expect a lot of train horns going off, like a million. They get a 3-yard run on 2nd and 8. Here comes a train horn. They get down the punt on the 12-yard line, here comes the train horn. So be prepared for that. It's loud. But again, some people think it's a terrible stadium and the baseball conversion is bad and they should concentrate their efforts on building a better, legit home stadium. I think it's cool. I like it. And one thing is, I went to the Marshall JMU game, as you guys mentioned, and you guys probably had a contingent. I wouldn't say like 500 fans, maybe 700. You guys were louder than Marshall fans. So if you show up like that at that stadium, you guys will take it over. I have no doubt about it.
Well, we know from our chat threads, it seems like there's going to be quite the crowd heading down to Atlanta. It's just such an easy flight for so many people. So and apparently there's a big alumni group in Atlanta. We've heard from some of the alumni association folks. So should be a good JMU crowd. Mike, thanks for doing this for us tonight. We'll let you get some sleep before you hit the road again. And I know just from my perspective, it's inspiring to see what you do. It's cool when somebody does something a little unique, and your commitment to it just speaks for your passion for the sport and passion for the programs. And I hope more schools embrace what you're doing, because it's really cool. Like, as Taylor said, for us to be able to kind of live through you and seeing what you do each and every week. It's just neat to see the pictures and how the fans really embrace your content. So all the best. And again, to the JMU fans listening to this podcast, if you appreciate what he's doing, click the link on his profile. Let's allow him to go to more venues and keep bringing us his content, because what he does is really good for all of us who are kind of the obsessed fans of this sport, and some of the casual fans too. It's pretty great just to see. So thanks, Michael. We appreciate it, and safe travels.
Yeah, thank you.
I appreciate all you guys individually. Thank you for being so nice to me at the game. And I will say this, the best part about the Sun Belt is the weeknight games, and it allows me to go over and over. And I saw Commissioner Gill in person at App State earlier in the month, and I told him, give JMU, ODU, ULM some weeknight games and mix it up. So I don't know how much pull I have. I do know that my account has more followers than the Sun Belt football account.
There you go.
So if you guys show up,
and Michael, one last thing. I don't know if you caught in the post game comments from Kurt Signetti. He said when they build out the other side, this place is going to be crazy. So you're obviously going to have to come back when that new sparkling side on the other side is renovated and put up. It'll give you another chance to get some great photos.
If you guys get new armrests, I'll be there. Okay, so whatever it is, let's go. So
whatever
again,
it takes.
Thank you guys. I appreciate you. Great job.
You.
Everybody loves JMU, what you guys are doing. So thank you again.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael. And with that, we're going to segue to someone we're really, really excited to bring on to you and JMU Nation, because as those of you who follow the Daily News Record probably noticed that Shane Metlin's been doing a lot of solo work over the last couple of weeks. That's because former friend of the pod, Noah Fleischman, made his way down to cover NC State. And over the past couple of weeks, the Daily News Record did what all papers and media outlets do now, went through a hiring process, and they made an announcement this week that there is a new beat reporter for JMU football. And she's somebody who's familiar with the program, maybe familiar with some of you who watch the show. Catie Harper, thanks for taking some time to join us tonight. Catie, excited, first of all, that you said yes. And I think in maybe the first 30 minutes of your announcement, I reached out just because one thing, if you haven't watched the show, we always say in every episode, we try to make mention that we're not journalists. We're not professional media members. The people who do your job are the ones that, put the time in to do the research and really have a commitment to developing those relationships, developing those sources, and creating the content that fuels all of us on a weekly basis. We say you give us the opportunity to kind of escape from the work life and the things we do each and every week. So just before we get into anything football related, introduce yourself to our audience and how you came to find yourself applying for this position.
Yeah, so as some of the viewers probably know, this is my second time around. I am a JMU alumna. I graduated in 2020, and I think my first time covering the football team was loosely in the fall of 2017. So it was my sophomore year, and I've been around the program through some pretty fun years. Went to JMU, honestly, not knowing a lot about the school and the football program, but now would like to say that I can kind of be an encyclopedia, especially of recent years. So yeah, found my way back. I've been in the design world the last few years because, like I said, I graduated in 2020. Wasn't the most fun time of year or time in history to graduate and look for a journalism job. But so I've been designing newspapers and sports sections in newspapers, and then just had this opportunity and really excited to get back to writing because it's definitely the the best thing for me and what I enjoy the most.
Catie, so thrilled to have you on, and good to finally meet in person, quote unquote. I know we've been following each other on Twitter for quite a while now. Take us a little bit behind the scenes, right? I think maybe you haven't officially started yet, but what are some things you want to focus on in your first 30 to 60 days, in the job, just with everything going on from what's happening at JMU right now, just ESPN. I was with my father earlier, and he was saying how ESPN just talks about JMU all the time, so there's a lot to follow there. But love to kind of hear, like, what's your priority and, like, what are you looking forward to, kicking your job off?
So yeah, I'll start officially on the 14th. So I guess the first official game will be App State. So that'll be a nice fun one to get thrown into. Yeah, I love covering the games. I really do. It's fun to just kind of sit in the press box, analyze everything. But one thing that I have always taken pride in and really want to bring to the DNR is just feature stories on these players. As much as fans love them as athletes, I really have always enjoyed kind of sharing who they were away from the field and kind of their stories and how they've come to be maybe the football player that they are. So that's probably going to be one of the things, especially coming in toward the end of the season, that I really want to feature on. And then, yeah, I'm really excited. It's such a fun time to get it back into covering this team. I would say even when I was in college covering it, it was still a fun time. It was when they were top dogs in the FCS, and now just seeing all of the national news that keeps getting brought up about JMU to help hopefully bring more attention to the school. And I think being a local media outlet, you're going to get maybe some more quotes, better quotes, have better relationships. So I'm really excited to just hit the ground running right away, because it's been a long 2 or 3 years off the beat. But yeah, I think features, covering the whole no bowl game right now, all of that stuff will be a lot of fun.
So, Catie, you mentioned in your opening comments about you covering the JMU football team as a reporter with the Breeze. Kind of give folks listening who aren't as familiar with you kind of your where from going to the Breeze to today, and kind of your background and how you got to where you are today, and then also maybe a little bit about your philosophy going forward on how you want to showcase and cover the team for the DNR.
Yeah, so I've been a sports person my entire life. Found journalism my freshman year of high school. Wanted to go to the University of Tennessee because that's where my dad went. Wanted to go to a big sports school. I don't know if anybody has looked at the cost of University of Tennessee out of state, but it's very, very expensive. So I ended up at JMU, and within the first week we had the student org night, and I went to one booth, and it was the Breeze. And I just remember going up to them and be like, "Hi, can I write for you guys?" And they're like, "Yeah, what section?" I was like, "Sports." That's it, sports. And I joined. I was the only girl. I was the only girl for a while. And when the second I walked in that door, I was like, I'm going to get on the football beat. That is what I'm going to do. It was the sport I knew the best going into. So I was like, I'm going to get there. And then I'm rambling, so now I can't even remember what I did. Got sports editor. Toward the middle of my sophomore year, became sports editor. So then I got to cover Mike Houston's final season at JMU, and then Signetti's first season. So I think that those were two crazy experiences, covering a coaching change and covering a national championship. Yeah. What were the other questions? Yeah, rambling.
No, and so after graduation, kind of the road that you've taken since graduation to getting to this point, and kind of some of the things that you want to do to highlight the football team.
Yeah. So after graduation, ended up at the company Lee Enterprises, which owns the Richmond Times-Dispatch. I tell people they own almost every single newspaper in Virginia except the DNR, it seems like. So I ended up there designing, like I had said earlier. Was a sports designer, so thankfully I could stay in the sports world. But I kept my eye out on reporting jobs. And funny enough, I was getting to the point where I was about to give up on the idea of reporting. And then all of the tweets came out about the DNR job opening up. I'm like, okay, this must be a little bit of a sign in some sense of the word that I shouldn't give up. So applied for that. And then, yeah, the philosophy for covering JMU, I went to do it obviously very well. And I think there's a lot of stories that can be told about JMU. And I want it's it's not a small school. People view it as a small program just because of the history and not being at the FBS for very long. So I really want to hold true to kind of like the idea of what JMU football is. And I think in the last few years I have seen firsthand what it is. And I think it's a group of players that pretty hard workers. I think blue bloods has been thrown around with how they kind of play sometimes. And so I think my philosophy of reporting, I kind of want to do it the way that JMU football plays at times and just hit the ground, be relentless in it, and just try and find every random story that you can find and get it out there for people to hear.
I like it.
Catie, I was going to ask you, first of all, as a former Breeze alum myself and a sports reporter for the Breeze, it's always cool to see Breeze reporters have success, especially in this field. I did want to ask you, are you SMAD major too?
I am a SMAD major.
Exactly. So fellow SMAD, we had Roger Sankson on a couple of weeks ago just talking about how
One
that
of
program.
Sankson is
The
one of my
best.
favorite human beings on the planet.
I concur. And I know he's listening and he heard me ramble on maybe too long about how much I appreciate it. He told me to call him Roger. I'm still calling him Dr. Sankson. So I don't
Oh
mind.
yeah, I
I've
don't.
never gotten past that. So
Yeah, I don't think I would be able to either.
exactly. But I wanted to ask you just this position, as somebody who follows local journalism a lot for my full-time job, if you go back in history, the names in this position, the Mike Barbers of the world, the Greg Mendias, what Noah did in this position, it has always been something that has been very close to the fans. But these positions have led to great success for these reporters who have made names for themselves, not just on the local beat, but wind up being go-to sources for national media outlets. What does it mean to you just personally to follow some of those names who, once again, made themselves into kind of fixtures in the journalism space in the Commonwealth and across the country?
Yeah, it's crazy because like all of the names you just mentioned, I've had relationships with them on social media for years now, and they're people that I covered JMU alongside Greg Medea, and I stand by. He was probably one of the best journalists to be a student journalist sitting next to. I sat next to him in the press box my senior year, and it was great just being able to kind of watch how he carried himself, watch how he handled breaking news stories, and so it's kind of exciting to follow those people because yeah, they've done a great job, and I know how passionate the JMU fans are, so I definitely want to continue that because it's it may be a small newspaper, small town, Harrisonburg, but it's a passionate fan base that follows it. So I feel like I've learned from all of them too. So hopefully that will be nice and following that.
Echoing what John was saying earlier, I feel like the prior beat writers were such a great relaxation away from reality, whether it was their walkthrough podcast or some of their stories on the players. I'm really excited to see some of your content come through. A little bit of a fanboy question. You mentioned you were at JMU from 2017 to 2020. There's a lot of winning during that time.
Who was quite a bit.
Who was your favorite player? Like who did you enjoy watching? Just so the fan base can know.
Initially, my first ever favorite JMU football player was Raven Green. I think I will 100% be honest. I have always been a defense first kind of person. So he was initially, so my freshman year, I guess I think he was a senior, and then he came back for a redshirt senior year the next year. And yeah, loved watching him. And then when I transitioned into covering the team, and after Raven Green had graduated, it kind of became someone who I think was underrated during his time at JMU. My other favorite was Landon Word. Love linebackers. And I mean,
awesome.
The names that were on that defense those 2 years that he was at JMU obviously were getting a lot of attention. So he was always someone I also really liked to watch.
No, love to hear that. And I think also, fun fact, I think your freshman year was probably College Game Day, right? Was there a second one in
sophomore year was second one. So freshman year was national championship, sophomore year was game day. So it was good first 2 years.
Amazing. Love to hear it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Catie,
what a time.
We know you haven't started yet, so we'll let you get back to planning. I know you still have a move to make. So if you're somebody who has a good leads on an apartment or a house in Harrisonburg, shoot Catie a DM as she tries to make this move.
Take this moment. If anybody has an apartment that they need someone to move into with a cat, let me know. If anybody needs a roommate, let me know. I need to get down there.
Awesome. Well, Catie, congratulations. And it's exciting to see, again, a Breeze reporter find a job that was a passion and a calling, and you've put in the work in your time here, and you get to cover a program that you know well. We can already tell from your answers and the last question from Michael, you're gonna be good at this. You're gonna do great, and we're excited to we're your three of your biggest fans here, and Steve Brown, who's not on this episode, is number 4. So we apologize in advance maybe for all the mentions. And we're going to tell Michael he can't do any more of these 2 a.m. direct messages or comments that we've heard from some past beat reporters who will say. Matthew Stoss in particular told me, he's like, man, I was always getting these direct. Who's this guy Michael sending me messages at 2 a.m. about the cover 2 that JMU's playing or something? So we'll try to keep it normal business hours at least. So, but seriously, thank you, and we hope that you come back, and we'll again be retweeting and resharing all your stuff so that everybody in the JMU landscape can find you. One last thing, how can people find you online, and where can they find your work once you start after the 14th?
Pretty much the best way to find me is on Twitter with @CatieHarper, and most important is just Catie with a C. Just make sure it's spelled right, and you'll find me.
There you go.
There aren't too many Catie Harpers.
We'll tag her in the follow-ups to this broadcast. So thanks again, Catie, and we'll talk to you down the road, and good luck with the move and safe travels back to Harrisonburg.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
Thanks, Catie.
All right, guys. And with that, we have reached the final thoughts segment of this broadcast. And if you're going to ask and you're out there, yes, we do have a final thought from Steve Brown. So get excited. Want to start with you, Taylor. Again, we've talked on a lot tonight. I'm going to preface your last thoughts might have something to do with some of the online conversation that happened after this, because that's where I'm going to touch on tonight after the win.
And I'll start off for those that are only listening to the audio version of this about why I'm out here next to the fire. If you did not catch our bonus episode earlier this week, highly recommend you go listen to that. We had a little fireside chat with the guys from Skyline Financial. John and I did the episode from our backyards with the fire, and with this perfect weather, late October, I couldn't pass up another time to throw on a fire and do this. So I don't. It does look a little creepy, maybe. So I don't know if this will be a regular look.
I'm just
for
upset
me.
you haven't thrown some of that pine on like you're doing before we led up to the broadcast. The flames are above your head at that point.
There's some brush that I still need to burn off before we say goodnight. But anyway, no, some of my final thoughts kind of revolve around a topic that I've continued to hit on the last few weeks, and the deeper we get into this season, so we're 8-0. And every game is something that I have not taken for granted, and I'm not taking for granted the opportunity to have an undefeated season. And, we don't know what's going to happen these next 4 weeks, but right now we are 8-0, and we're in a position similar to some of these G5 programs. I think back to, the Boise State runs and UCF, the last 2 years of what JMU has done, regardless of what happens in the future and what happens the following years, this is going to be a story that's being covered across the national media that's probably going to resonate for the next decade. And so I think to take the opportunity to just kind of live in the moment and realize what we're getting to live through as JMU fans, and something we're likely going to be referring back to for years to come. And so with all of that comes so much debate, and not just between other schools, but a lot of internal debate between JMU fans. To be honest, among the three of us and Steve, I mean, we don't all share the exact same position. So what I'm about to say is less of a JMU sound off position, and this is just more my personal opinion as we move forward and these debates continue to come about. The target's going to be on our back. I mean, there's a lot, our rivals and people that aren't loving all the attention JMU's getting. I mean, they just cannot wait for JMU to lose that game. And I'm sure there's a lot of fans across the country that were like, oh man, if Old Dominion pulls this off, I can't wait to hit on Twitter and Facebook and do all that stuff and just rub it in their face. And so it's not a level of arrogance, but here's the thing. We've talked about how the statistics are not counting, and that's a shame because we have some record-breaking performances that are happening right now. We've beaten to death the fact that as of right now, things could always change, but as of right now, and the likelihood is we will not have an opportunity to participate in the Sun Belt Championship, and as of right now, we will not have a chance to participate in a bowl game outside of there not being enough teams to qualify, and that includes the outside opportunity of an NY6 bowl game. Okay. So those are some things. And now, for those of you that are maybe not aware or familiar, ESPN and a lot of these sports sites, they're going to start using the college football ranking system, which comes out Tuesday. And so moving forward, regardless of how high JMU climbs in the coaches poll and the AP poll, we are not going to be listed. We're going to be listed as unranked in a lot of these TV broadcasts and things, which is another thing that's just kind of a shame. And so a lot of talk comes about around and I see this fighting with JMU fans, stop whining about we knew the rules or don't argue about this. We need to focus on the game ahead. We need to focus on just being 1-0. We need to focus on just winning. We don't. And again, this is just really my opinion. We don't, because we're fans. And where the players don't have the opportunity, they're not supposed to dwell on all this stuff and pay attention to the media. The coaches aren't doing that. And to be honest, for political reasons, JMU as an institution really can't go out there and probably say what they want to say. So the only people that get to really push this narrative, push this story, and share just how special this is and how some of these things are injustices to the program are the fans. Are there ways to do this the right way and the wrong way? I'm going to highlight. I don't know the person that runs this account, but the Sidelines JMU account on Twitter earlier this week, called out for this is such an injustice that we need to boycott the Sun Belt. We need to boycott the championship game. And I want to give whoever's running this account a lot of credit, because I really respect it for the fact that they later, after a lot of backlash, went on there and posted, "Hey, I take back what I said after listening to a lot of other opinions. I don't think that's the right thing to do." And cooler heads prevailed. So I'm not endorsing all complaints and all social media posts and arguments on this topic. But at the end of the day, I think everyone has their right to express how they feel about this in their own way. But I feel like it is the JMU fan base. It is kind of our role and responsibility to share how we feel about this, to push the narrative of what should be done and how we really should be considered in all these areas, because the players can't and the coaches can't and the university can't. So go ahead and continue to be that voice, because what that happens is you see a large fan base continuing to be vocal about these topics. That is why ESPN takes almost every commercial break to come back and say how this really needs to change. That's why we have half the state legislature. By the end of the week, we might have the entire state legislature saying how we need to look into some ways that we can get around this. And so I just want to say, I don't think there's a right or wrong position to take on this, but me personally, I'm going to continue to find appropriate and mature ways to push for the fact that our statistics should count. We should be in that championship game. We should go bowling. And regardless of what ranking system you're looking at, JMU is one of the best teams in the country, and I never want to take that for granted.
There you go. Michael, floor is yours.
I was gonna say, echoing Taylor's stance, I will say this, hearing Matt Berry on ESPN, hearing the broadcast last night, just hearing all the mentions all over national media. I think, John, you hit on the point. We're America's team right now. I don't know if I'm the only one that feels that way, or maybe it's a little bit of me with my purple tone glasses, but you're seeing JMU all over the media. And I agree with Taylor says. There's a right way and a wrong way to do it. But some of these media outlets, they're yelling it from the rooftop, and those voices get double and triple, and they echo right throughout all of college football. So my stance is this, as always, just win. Because I was talking to some fans earlier today. We lose one game, it all goes away. Let's just call it what it is. It all goes away. So we have to relish in this moment, take it all in. I'm excited for everyone that gets to go to Atlanta. I have a wedding next weekend, which I'm very excited about. We'll find a way to stream it underneath the table. But go to Atlanta, be loud, be proud. Georgia State, they've got a very senior-laden team, and I know I'll be able to hear them from the stands. Lastly here, and I know we're way over time now, I just want to say how proud I was as an alum, seeing that stadium full. Just seeing, I got emotional. I'm not going to be honest. Like Ben Markowitz, a good friend of ours, sits about 3 rows behind us, and I turned around. I was like, man, I'm crying. It's just seeing the stadium and just seeing the crowd and everyone just unified, because you don't really see that. Like, we had a big stadium. We were winning FCS over the years, and I've been following for 14, 15 years. Many of you guys listening and the folks on it on today have been following for way longer, but you just don't see that. And John, I know you kind of made fun of me about my 2 a.m. tweets to Matthew Stoes. I guarantee there's way more people now tweeting at DNR reporters and tweeting at people and talking about JMU football than ever before. And I'm just so proud to hear this, how much the fan base has grown, and how much The students are now part of it. They're part of the culture. The fan base cares, and how we are all unified at the end of the day. So super proud moment for me this weekend, and just so excited to see where this program goes. And just win, everything else takes care of itself. I'm optimistic.
And I'm going to do kind of a middle ground, I hope, of both of you, because I think you both touch on some great points. I agree with your last point about how a loss during this season could pop the bubble of maybe the national media focus and coverage of JMU. But for me, is like, I think yesterday might have been. I said a couple of weeks ago that the win over Georgia Southern was one of the more enjoyable days I've had in Harrisonburg, just because the weather was so crisp. It was just perfect. Yesterday, I didn't know if I would top that, and then yesterday happened, and I found myself emotional, particularly because of homecoming. And I saw some people yesterday who I remember having conversations back in 2002 and 2003 when some of my dorm mates in Eagle, I was convincing them to try to go to games, to say, hey, why not spend 3 hours in Bridgeforth? And I remember saying with my friend James Irwin and Brandon Sweeney and Eric Pitzers of the world that this program, one day it's going to get there. We didn't know what one day getting there meant, but we just always knew that, if we do this, this is going to happen. And that's when Pitzer started his no bowls and some other conversation. We were always, this puzzle piece is going to fit into this, which is going to lead to recognition, which is going to lead to success. And to see it happen yesterday, it felt like a moment where that had all arrived. And that's where I say it is okay to enjoy the moment for what it is, but also whatever happens in the next couple of games can't take away from what's happened through 8 games. We have already reached our win total from last season, in a season where we played the 2 toughest teams in the West, playing against teams that are, these are, as Steve would say in his usual comments, are not slouch programs who have storied and proud traditions. And that's where I say, like, there were a lot of people that had a great day yesterday in Harrisonburg that nothing can take away from, regardless of what happens in the season. And I will reserve my final comment to say this: there were some, I think, probably feedback in some online circles after yesterday's game that I don't want to diminish, because there were some issues with general admission seating that we saw some people posting on. And my message to those fans is, I don't want you to think that your feedback is not legitimate. You should share that feedback with JMU, as we've said on this episode many, many times in the show, that JMU does listen to your feedback. But I would urge people to don't let minor issues or things that happen in the concourse take away from what's happening in this moment. If you want to see the other side of the stadium built, let's just, again, emphasize the importance of that financial support for JMU. I think JMU, Kurt Signetti is not making that comment in the post game if there aren't some things happening behind the scenes, at least in the planning stages, to look at what the other side of the stadium would cost, what the architectural renderings and plans. But we know if we want to enhance the stadium atmosphere and get more people in it, it's going to take support. As we've said, those $10, $20, $100 donations or more matter when you're talking about thousands and thousands of alums who are now more engaged than they've maybe ever been in the past. So please contact the Duke Club. We heard from the Montpelier Collective that they had a huge weekend, but that needs to continue. We need to continue to sustain that momentum that they're having, because, again, the more success we have, the more eyeballs are on our players, and we want this party to continue. It's going to need to be new donors and new supporters in this program. And I know there's already somebody typing a comment to say, you guys say it on every episode. Yeah, we're going to say it on every one, as long as we're doing this platform, because that's what it's going to take for us to reach where we all want to go and to have more weekends like we had yesterday. But still, enjoy the moment as much as you can, because these are special times that are not guaranteed. There are many programs out there that had their moment in the sun that then find themselves on a downswing. If there's an injury or something else happens in the program, it's not guaranteed. So don't take it for granted, but also, find ways to really, truly relish what's happening, because there are a lot of programs in the state of Virginia, a lot of programs around the country that would love to trade places with us. So with that, we do want to get to the final thoughts from the person we all know you wait to hear for every week, Steve Brown. He has an event tonight, but he was kind enough to record his final thoughts for tonight's broadcast. And we'll give you Steve's final thoughts now as we head into the game against Georgia State.
Georgia State, the 2023 Junkyard Dog Tour is heading your way. 3:30 on Saturday on ESPN2. We'll give you your second loss in a row in a devastating fashion. State, you've had some impressive wins this year over Coastal and Marshall. That's made me somewhat happy for you. But you've had terrible losses with Troy and Georgia Southern. JMU's had an impressive win over Marshall and Huntington, and that's where the comparison between our two programs ends. JMU beat Troy, a team that crushed you, and absolutely destroyed Georgia Southern, a team that lit you up last Thursday. This Saturday, you get the chance to go one-on-one with the great one, the team that's undefeated in 2023, ranked 23rd in the nation, and is the best team in the Sun Belt in the G5. State, you must think that Atlanta is the heartbeat of America and that a big city school is better than a school from the Shenandoah Valley. Well, JMU's coming to Atlanta as kings of the East, and these country boys are leaving your city as the team that will be one game away from clinching the Sun Belt title in 2023. Now then, JMU will be leaving Atlanta 9-0 because it's the heartbeat of America. State, you're simply next. See you Saturday.
There you go. Steve Brown and the myth, the legend.
Love it.
As we exit this podcast, Taylor and I were kind of chatting in the private chat that we have, that we did want to do a little bit of a teaser. We can't say exactly who we have as a special guest this week, but just stay tuned to at JMU Sound Off across our social channels. We'll be releasing an interview that we have this week that I think a lot of you in the JMU fan base are going to want to hear. We're going to just leave it at that. Stay tuned. Maybe around Tuesday, Wednesday morning, you'll start to see something from our accounts. But stay tuned. We're really excited for the conversation we're going to bring you this week because we hope to make some news. So with that, I'm just going to say thank you to Michael and Taylor, Steve, as always, for his passion and support. Guys, go get some rest. It was a long day yesterday. I know that's what I'm about to do. And to the fans, one last time, thank you. We had so many people, again, come up to us yesterday who said they were appreciating the content. Every week it's somebody new, and we're all kind of in awe that first of all, you guys take an hour and 15 or an hour and 20 minutes a week to listen to us ramble on. To those who do, it matters. It's what fuels us to push these late nights and to continue to have these conversations. And our commitment, as we say in every episode, is as long as you guys keep listening, we're going to keep doing it. But just know from all of us that it matters, and we are appreciative for your feedback and comments, because it's, again, why we're doing this. So Taylor, Michael, enjoy your nights. Michael, I'm sure you have something delicious coming to the house. If not, I'm probably hitting the snack closet here at my work to for the end of the broadcast. But we'll see you guys next Sunday night for JMU Sound Off. To those who are heading to Atlanta, safe travels. There's a big contingent going from Sound Off. We'll do some content from down there as well. But if not, we hope to be coming to you at 9-0 for Sound Off next week, 8 p.m. JMU Sound Off. Go Dukes. Talk to you guys later.